Հարգելի պառաթիվի դուք ինձ լսում եք։ Երբ որ սկսվի, հետ սկսի ես միկրոֆոնս կտանեմ այնտեղ կդնեմ,
Good morning. Can I tempt you to your seats? Nubar, come and join us up here. Gabriel. Thank you. Come on, stragglers, find a seat. Please, could you find a seat? We're going to start in 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. There is a chair waiting for you somewhere. Grab it. Don't be nice to anybody. Don't say hello to anybody. Just sit. Find that chair that is waiting for you. So welcome everybody. Could you welcome me? On humanitarianism in education. And thank you to all of you who have welcomed to this glorious place, which is UWC Diligent. So I think for all of us who are your guests, who have received your welcome, I think this is the moment, all of us as guests, can we give a round of applause to everybody who's diligent? It was wonderful. So this is the 3rd year running when we have been announcing the winners of an Aurora Prize, a Young Aurora Prize. The Young Aurora Prize, as you know, is a partnership between the Aurora Humanitarian Initiative, between the United World Colleges, between Scholar Mundi and between Teach for All. It is the most wonderful reading, and no doubt there will be the most wonderful stories today. And it is wonderful to be here. My name is Julian Middleton. About 150 years ago, I started an NGO called Common Purpose, which is now, it seems to be more huge every time I look at it. It's about developing civic leadership with people. Other people say it's about waking up sleepwalking citizens. I like that one. Waking up sleepwalking citizens, including all of you. I'm here because I was educated in French, so I believe that education is revolution. I'm not English. They seem to think that education is some sort of training. I believe that education is revolution. I'm here because I, like many of us here, have no doubt a little bit miserable about the world at the moment. And as you get more miserable, you need doses of inspiration from places like Aurora and people like Aurora. So that's another reason I'm here. And the third reason I'm here is because I love Veronica. I think she's an extraordinary woman. And I would do anything. I would do just about anything Veronica told me to do. And to follow her humanitarian vision is something I'm proud of doing. Right, this is some sort of loose attempt at telling you what's going to happen in the next year out, right? First, we're going to help with UWA so that we know more about UWC. Then we're going to hear from Nubar, who's chair of the judges of the Young Aurora Prize. And we've asked him to do something that he thinks this person is going to be doing this today. He's going to start us off saying, looking back at my education, where were the germs, the seeds of humanitarianism that were in my education? Yeah? Formal education. And so he's going to talk about what sparked him while he was at school that made humanitarianism part of his life. Then we're all going to stare at the judges, okay? A survey there. The more we stare at them, the more pressure we put on them to choose the right winners, yeah? We're going to lean on them hard and stare at the judges, as you know, Maria Fafana, Lord Darcy, Nubar himself, and Pakistan. Yes? So we're going to put as much pressure as we can on you.
որը մեզ կխոսի կրթության և մարդասիրության համաժողովության մասին եւ բնականաբար օրինակ բարեգործական 5 տարեկան է եւ վերոդկայի խոսքի վերջում ուրեմն բոլորդ արտանում եք եւ մեքսիկական մի բալիկ եք ուրեմն իրականացնել Այնուհետև մենք կլսենք 3
We're going to hear from the finalists, and after each presentation from the finalists, we'll go through a manipulation of the judges. I'll explain that to you just a little in a minute. And then we have a very serious panel with 4 very serious people who are going to say, having seen that inspiration of those young people, what is it in education that we need to do more that will produce more humanitarians and not just bankers? It's not that I don't like bankers, and it's not that I don't know that there are quite a lot of humanitarian bankers, but we do need a lot of humanitarians too. So we're then going to have a very serious panel, and all the way through you're going to be inspired and remember the moments when your education prompted you to be more of a humanitarian, and then you're going to do hashtag Aurora at school and tell us those stories. Then, Nubar's going to come and tell us who they've chosen as the winner, and then we're going to have a bit of a celebration. Fair game? You're not allowed to go to sleep. If I think you are going to sleep, I'll torture you, the lot of you, yeah? Lots of Mexican waves, huge amount of influencing the judges. We've got to make sure they make the right decision, yeah? So everybody's in this morning. Let's start with Gabriel.
Good morning, Barry Luis, buenos dias. We're here today celebrating 2 different things that are connected. Aurora is about saving lives. It's celebrating people who commit their lives to the ultimate ethical decision, saving others. Education is the same. Education changes lives. The UWC movement is an assembly of 18 schools and colleges in 4 continents, 160 national committees, lots of volunteers, lots of staff, all of whom share one mission. Education is not an end in itself. Education has to be a force. A force for what? To have an impact. Can you tell me the UWC mission, UWC students? The UWC movement makes education a force. Yeah.
Louder. Could we hear that again? Louder.
A force to unite peoples, nations, and cultures for peace and a sustainable future. And therein lies the connection. I like the British novelist E.M. Forster, who said it very, very succinctly. Only connect. If you read The Little Prince, it's about taming each other and establishing a bond that would change our lives. That's what we're here for, to learn and to live together. I'm pretty sure that E.M. Forster and Saint-Exupéry weren't thinking of Irish pubs or pizza delivery services or salsa dance at a restaurant on a Friday night in Diligent, but that's just one symptom of what an international education really means. Why do we think that education has to have an action, a power, a force? Because otherwise it's about me, and knowledge on its own is absolutely worthless. So today we're very privileged to welcome 3 teams of students who are making education a force. We have a team from Atlantic College in the United Kingdom, from UWC East Africa in Tanzania, and from UWC Pearson College in Canada. I'm going to come back to UWC Diligent now. 229 students from 80 different nationalities. Many would argue that it doesn't make any sense. Why would you fly people across the world to live together in the Caucasus, to experience significant cultural shocks, to learn Armenia, to learn that the French people are not what the prototype says on the TV, and to learn that actually not all Americans are the same, and that actually I didn't know where Armenia was. Now I know where Armenia is on the map. All of that is part of the big vision. We educate the students so that they realize that actually, as human beings, we share far more than separates us. And that's the key message of a UWC education, to realize that we share a lot. Kishore Mahbubani is a former chair of the board in the school in Singapore, Southeast Asia, and he was Singapore's ambassador to the United Nations. And he said, the problem of United Nations is that we think that we are on 200 separate boats with 2 separate commanders, captains, all of them with their own boat, with their own direction. Now we know that is not true. There is one boat, and we cannot have over 200 captains fighting each other, doing their own agenda. We need to understand we have one planet, one life, and it is ours. It's not individual. So with that, I would like to welcome Nubar. Thank you.
All right, my name is Nubar Fayan, and as usual, I was asked to talk about something that I'm neither prepared to nor qualified to talk about, but they knew that it wouldn't stop me. And so here I am. I have the privilege of being a co-founder of the Aurora Initiative together with Ruben Vartanian and Vartan Grigorian, as well as having been involved as a supporter of the school and many of our other projects. And I cannot be happier and more proud of being here on the 5th anniversary of the school. The school, just like many other undertakings, as you'll hear later today of some of our finalists, starts out as a sense of a possibility and an obligation, and then what results kind of reaffirms that, and what we see today with all of you here is really a terrific thing. So I was asked to talk a little bit about traces in my education that may have predisposed me to work in part on humanitarian issues. I don't consider myself a humanitarian. I'd like to rise to that level at some point, but I certainly am quite active to try to support what these extremely unique individuals do. And so in that regard, I'm part of a broad family. And I must say, trying to come up with an answer to this, I struggled because it's very hard to think in hindsight what might have been a contributor. Everything looks like it's a contributor. But what I thought I'd do is just mention very quickly 4 or 5 different ideas that, as I look back, I think did have a role to play. I was born and raised in Lebanon, and my education in Lebanon, quite surprisingly in hindsight, was a world-class education. We learned 4 languages simultaneously. When I eventually moved to Canada, I literally had done everything they were doing in the class that I was supposed to go into, and I didn't even know. And one of the things that education did was to actually give to me a range of possibilities to learn. And I think that how you apply it then, as we talk about humanitarian activities, is the next. But certainly the ambition was there. But one of the things I realized in looking back was that it was a very homogeneous kind of world I lived in. By being Armenian, I went to an Armenian school, and 100.0% of the people there were Armenian, and I was living with people that did not represent diverse views and diverse issues. Then I was exposed to civil war, and I'd say probably just for a whole year, going to school every other month for 3-4 days, and the fact that the teachers kept focusing on educating us, despite the fact that we had curfews and ceasefires and bomb raids, and we would literally run down. Literally, as I thought back on the drive here, I think the fact that the educators realized that despite all that, we had to actually learn things to be able to do something for the world, was remarkable. The teachers we had were quite remarkable. They did not kind of give up and say, well, this place is going to be destroyed, so let's do something different. Immigration had a lot to do with it because I ended up going to Montreal in Canada where I spent my high school years, and I ended up in a Jesuit school. I didn't know the word Jesuit, I hadn't seen snow, I didn't know many things. But that act of immigration and the diversity I got exposed to in Canada, I must say had a lot to do with opening my mind to different ways and different plights. I used to think Armenians have at that time, 70-year-old injustice, and then I realized that everybody has some sense of injustice and that they need to strive to make things better. And I think that my education, in that case it was a Jesuit school, I must say, exposed me more than just to the actual science and the arts, etc., but to this notion of morality and ethics. And I would not have probably received any formal exposure to that in a high school setting. I did, and it caused me to start thinking about tough choices that at an early age. And I think that's a super important part of getting young folks, and you'll hear from some of them today that are far ahead of anything that I ever saw, but really deal with these things early on. Books in general and the exposure I had to books, and in my case particularly, and those of you who know me, you'll understand why, I was fascinated by utopias and dystopias. There's a point in school where they make you read these utopian books that are meant to make the world look completely surreal and to make a point. I was drawn to them because I wasn't that interested in the way the world is. I wanted to understand how the world could be, for better or for worse. And I found a lot of inspiration in the worst versions because you could see how quickly things could be disastrous and to try to avoid that. In hindsight, I think that had a role with what we've ended up doing. And then finally, this notion of possibility and responsibility. I think that in an education, now we're born with infinite possibility and no responsibility. And over time, we chisel away at what we think is possible, especially for us, and we either do or don't take on responsibility. And I think there's critical lessons in exposure and education that can keep you realizing that all of it is a possibility for you, and that you don't have to narrow the range of things you might want to be involved with, and that responsibility is an individual one. For example, when I grew up, I used to think that taking care of suffering people and taking care and intervening in difficult situations was the role of government, was the role of international institutions. And thank God, neither of them did a very good job, because at some point, together with partners, we realized it's really up to individuals as well, and that there's, in a small way, things we could do. And exposing students to that early on, and the individual aspect of making a difference. The notion that I'd stand on a stage and talk to you about this topic has nothing to do with my PhD in biochemical engineering or my life in innovation and starting companies, and that's the point. The point is that if you say to yourself, well, I'm a doctor, I can go help people, but I can't do anything else because that's not my specialty, or I'm a lawyer or whatever. In every different profession, I think we can be drawn to this. And my education certainly, I think, prepared me for that range of possibilities. Last thing I just want to say is this immigrant mindset. A couple of years ago, I had the chance to address the UWC student body, and I said to them that among the biggest things they should take away from this is this notion of immigration. See, we think of immigration physically, and you're exposed to this because you've immigrated here. You're spending 2 years in a diverse but also foreign place, and it's causing your senses to be tuned and to be ready for anything because you can't take anything for granted. It's all new, and it's a very stressful but at the same time kind of enabling moment. Keep that mindset throughout your life, because change is just immigration in thought. It starts with people thinking this could be different, and then realizing that you can, together with others, begin to bring about the change that you want to see. And that power of immigration in thought, in time, not just in physical location, is where education can predispose you to latch on to big, massive undertakings, ones that make you feel inadequate. If you feel inadequate trying to do something in the humanitarian sphere or anywhere else, that's exactly where you should be. And if you feel completely prepared for what you're about to do, my advice is don't do it, because there's 1,000 other people who can do it too. So those are the things that come to mind. I hope this is kind of at least a discussion starter, but I do want to say that what you've heard from me will be a very, very small input compared to what you're going to hear from our young humanitarians. And I'm super happy to see that level of integration of education and humanitarian issues taking place today, and also in UWC Dilijan. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Right, come on, let's get going. So we've got 3 groups, yes? But it started with 14 groups, yes? There were 14 no, it wasn't colleges, it's projects that were put forward from 12 UWCs and the African Leadership Academy. That was whittled down to Atlantic College, Wales, and we're going to hear about a project called Young Voices from Rosemary and Blanca. Is that right? Yes. Brilliant. Then we're going to hear from UWC East Africa about a project which is smokeless chickens. Chickens or pigeons? Kitchens! Oh, it's going to be very boring. It was much more exciting when it was chickens. Yeah. Perhaps you could just change it a bit. Right, okay. And that will be from Kelvin, Yahaya, and Nikolai. Is that right? I got that right. And then Pearson College, UWC, Precious Plastics, Antoine, and Eden. So one after the other. Now, you as the audience have to stay awake, right? You have to listen. And at the end of it, I'm going to ask you to shout out words that come to mind when you think back at what you've heard. Inspiring, chickens, anything you like, yes? But I'm going to do word association at the end of it just to make sure you're awake and moving, and then we'll go to the next one. And then we'll do word association on that, then we'll go to the next one, and then we'll do word association. Am I making sense? Vaguely. You're right with this, are you? You need a piece of paper and a pencil to remember them all. Right, so the first one, which is called Young Voices. Welcome on the stage.
Less and less young people across the globe are actively participating in their societies. This problem is a result of a glaring lack of civic education and civic awareness amongst young people.
Schools are overly focused on preparing us to be consumers and workers rather than active citizens, and I think this is emphasized by the fact that many young people think that voting is a choice rather than a duty, and it's highlighted in socioeconomically deprived areas where parents don't fill the gap left by the schools.
Young people's apathy, whether social or political, is staring us in the face. A strong civic identity and engagement in society is a massive step towards fixing this. This is why we launched our project, Young Voices, Peer-led Civic Education. We hope to protect young people's right to participation. We wish to educate and activate the young electorate so that they can participate in decision-makings that will affect them in the future. We aim ultimately to engage, educate, and empower. To these ends, during Project Week in March, we carried out a self-designed civic education program at 3 local secondary schools here in Wales, reaching over 120 students.
Our program has 3 components. The first part is a series of workshops on democracy, voting, and political systems, how the Welsh political system works, and why we should vote, etc. The second part includes workshops on global issues, sharing with students issues from our home countries. The third element is an election simulation, including a Conservative party, a Liberal party, and a third party. We guide students to read the information booklet, including each party's platform. Political candidates then deliver their speeches, which is followed by a discussion on how to fill out the ballot, etc.
Furthermore, we don't just operate on a local level, but also on a national policy level. We have already been working with an Assembly alumni, the Welsh Minister for International Relations, as well as the Welsh Youth Parliament, the Children's Commissioner for Wales, and the Electoral Reform Society to lower the minimum voting age in Wales to 16 and to incorporate civic education into the national curriculum, now under revision.
We receive overwhelmingly positive feedback from our participants. Even 3 months later, when we re-engage with some of the 8th graders, they could still remember the workshops and remember how they were inspired.
With Aurora recognition and funding, we believe that this national impact is more likely to be achieved. Most excitingly, the Aurora funding would allow us to have global impact through the UWC network and from learning from leading projects in countries such as Norway. The funding will help us to learn about the best global practice so that our local and national provision is stronger, both in terms of implementation and policy.
Young voices, engage, educate, empower.
Hi everyone, I'm Rosemary from China.
And I'm Blanca from Finland. Rosemary, did you see the news yesterday? Boris Johnson accepted the Brexit deal with the EU.
What? That's going to have such a huge impact on Wales. Wales receives the largest amount of EU funding in the UK every single year.
But why did they vote to leave then?
Well, this. Over the past 20 years, voter turnout in Welsh Assembly elections have been consistently lower than 50%. In socioeconomically disadvantaged communities, people share this widespread perception that politics is a high-up subject irrelevant to them. They think that they don't possess the power to determine their collective life. They think that they don't have a voice. They think that getting involved will not make a difference. And so Brexit is an angry vote. It is a sudden reaction.
When we piloted our civic education program at 3 different schools with drastically different socioeconomic backgrounds, we found that in the more privileged schools, the students had a much greater understanding of civic knowledge than in the less privileged ones.
Even though civic education is not provided in any Welsh secondary schools, in more privileged communities and schools, there are student councils and lots of extracurricular activities that help students nurture self-governance. However, in other less privileged schools, these opportunities are non-existent. So we began to think, how can we help all of our peers to better understand what does it mean to be a citizen living in a civic society? What does it mean, and how can we mobilize everybody to actively participate in building and shaping our communities? At the end of the day, how can we nurture the habit of civic engagement?
Our project, Young Voices, tackles the issue of young people's civic disengagement on 2 levels. On the local level, every week we go out to a local secondary school and teach our own self-designed program. We're also trying to make this self-sustaining by teaching the older students at the school how to deliver these workshops to their younger peers, hence keeping the peer-led approach going. We aim to empower, engage, and educate. We want to empower the students to grow into being active citizens in their societies. We want to educate them to make sure that they're ready to do this with confidence. And we want to provide under-resourced schools with the tools to give this education to their students, hence closing the knowledge gap between different communities. We also want the students to become engaged, to build a society together and create a sense of a civic identity.
Also operating on a national level, we're trying to create 2 policy change. First of all, we want to include civic education into the Welsh national curriculum, which is currently at the moment under revision. Secondly, we are pushing for the passage of the Votes at 16 bill, which would enable 16 and 17-year-olds in Wales to vote in the Welsh Assembly election by 2021. We're working hard with the Electoral Reform Society and the Welsh Youth Parliament in trying to persuade the Welsh government to adopt our policy suggestions.
So, what's the impact of our project? The impact is that we will empower marginalized communities, and we will make sure that every young person has an equal voice and an equal opportunity to engage in society.
And in terms of the impact, how to measure the impact of our project, we have been and will continue to conduct comprehensive surveys with our participants. Then we are conducting quantitative and qualitative analysis to track their acquisition of civic knowledge and their civic understanding. Finally, we're also using the size of our project, as in the number of schools that we reach, and the cost effectiveness over the long term as 2 key indicators of our success.
What can we achieve with the help from the Young Aurora funding? On a local level, we would be able to expand from 3 to 15 schools over a 12-month period. We also want to implement the self-sustaining model in all of these schools. On a national level, we want to create a kind of online community, an interactive free website that all the schools can access, where teachers and students can add their own material, like lesson plans and activities, where they can also inspire each other by blogging about their progress.
On a global level, we wish to extend our program to local communities in other countries through the UWC network. We want to have a big UWC conference and provide training to our peers in other UWC so that they will be able to teach and deliver these programs to local students in their local communities. And lastly, and more fundamentally, we believe that the Aurora recognition will give us legitimacy in persuading the Welsh Government to adopt our policy suggestions. This recognition will also give us an important foothold in getting into less engaged schools, especially in more deprived areas. Over 10 of these schools have rejected us using the excuse of academic overload.
Without the funding, we will try to strive to acquire as much alumni and school support as we can. We may not be able to reach as many students, but we will try to have as great of an impact on the ones that we can reach as possible.
Now, in terms of the sustainability of our project, we believe that our project is highly sustainable because we are a newly established CAS activity and we run every week at UWC Atlantic. We have a team of both first and second year students and 3 staff supervisors. Over the past few months of developing our project, we have also developed a network of partner schools and organizations that help us both on the local level and the national level. But at the end of the day, more fundamentally, we believe that the true sustainability of our project lies in what we call the dandelion effect. Just as when you blow a dandelion, the seeds spread out and take roots in new places, each student that participates in our program is able to take his or her learning back to his or her community and make an impact there. For example, when we re-engaged with a group of 8th graders last June, 3 months after they first participated in our program, this little boy here could confidently explain to the Children's Commissioner for Wales what does spoiling a ballot meant. And we really believe that it is in small moments like these that we truly see the impact of our project.
Young people's voices deserve to be heard, regardless of socioeconomic status. That's why we believe that we need to engage, educate, and empower. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, come on, words. What's shouted out to you? Give me a word. Word. Impact. What? Say it again. Important. Engagement. Power. Empowerment. Go on. Voices. Someone back there, shout it louder. People. Is that what you said? Not chickens, people. Dandelion. You like that? Right. Thank you very much. Judges, I hope you're listening to the words. Yeah, right. So chickens next. Let's go.
Mama Stevie is a local Chaga woman and the wife of a maintenance worker at her school, UWC East Africa. She lives within 10 minutes of our campus and was the first recipient of our smokeless stove. This is her story.
Kwa jina naitwa Vanessa Steven Mushi. Mara kwanza kupikia kwenye jiko la mafiga kwa kweli niliteseka sana. Na sio mimi tu, pamoja na watoto wangu. Moshi ulikuwa unatutesa, macho alikuwa yanakuwa mekundu. Vile vile mtoto usiku alikuwa halali. Mimi mwenyewe pia kifua kilikuwa kinanisumbua kupitia moshi. Na matibabu huwa yanaongezeka kila siku na wapeleka watoto hospitali. Baada ya kupata jiko la kupikia, sio la mafiga matatu, unapata ahueni kidogo.
After visiting here and hearing Mama Stevie's powerful story, we knew we had to act. We knew that this was an epidemic, not just across Tanzania, but in our very own backyard, in our community. From there, the Smokeless Kitchen was born. The Smokeless Kitchen cast was born to help all the Mama Stevies suffering from respiratory disease across Tanzania. Smokeless Kitchens is aimed at reducing and eliminating the overwhelming effects of smoke experienced in the kitchens of the indigenous communities of the Maasai and Chaga tribes in Moshi, Kilimanjaro. The project aims to do this by sustainably sourcing low-cost, high-quality smokeless stove that essentially acts as, with the difference being that they remove smoke from kitchen surroundings, filter it, and reuse less solid fuel. Sustainability has always been at the core of our initiative, being firm believers that any truly successful project must sustain itself for years and years. This is why our Smokeless Stove project is going to use the fundings from the Aurora initiative as seed capital for our ongoing project. Ultimately, we believe that this project has the full capacity to help hundreds, if not thousands of women across Tanzania.
That's why we thank you so much for giving us this opportunity.
Habari zenu, jina langu naitwa Kelvin. My name is Kelvin. I'm really happy to be here today with my friends.
Habari zenu, jina langu naitwa Yahaya. My name is Yahaya. I'm very honored to be here today. I've been living in Tanzania for almost my entire life.
Habari yenu, mimi naitwa Nicoli. My name is Nicoli, and like Yahaya and Kelvin, I've lived in Moshi my entire life. It's a true honor and privilege to be here today.
So just for context, this is a map of northeastern Tanzania, where we come from. And our school is located in Moshi town, and the major tribes in our vicinity are Maasai and Chaga, and then the communities we're trying to help. Well, interestingly, I'm Chaga, Yahaya right here is Chaga, and well, Nicoli's been living in Moshi for almost his entire life. We also consider him as a member of our community.
So, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to begin today with a truly startling statistic. Did you know that 11% of all deaths in Tanzania can be attributed to respiratory disease? Respiratory diseases kill more people than malaria.